朋友，大家晚上好！欢迎您来到美国华裔联盟 CAA Action 美国平等联盟 ACE 第3次全国会议。我是华盛顿州西雅图的谢杰，很高兴再次和大家相会在网上。过去的一周又发生了几件备受关注的大新闻，比如上周二 Fox News 直播了2020年的第1次总统辩论，相信很多朋友都已经收看了。接着周四，也就是10月1日 ，Trump 总统和第一夫人测出了新冠病毒阳性。总统先生随后入住 Walter Reed Medical Center 接受治疗。这些事无不牵动着广大选民的心。让我们在祝福总统先生和第一夫人早日康复的同时，再多多关注各地的选举，祝福美国人民选出能更好地代表民众利益、为民众服务的各级议员和官员。今天，纽约第3国会选区的候选人 George Santos 来到了我们的会议现场，想和大家聊聊他和他的政选纲领。Mr. George Santos is a candidate for New York's 3rd Congressional District, which includes most of the North Shore of Long Island, expands from northwestern Suffolk County across northern Nassau County and into far northeastern Queens. Mr. Santos would like to introduce himself and present his campaign key issues. Let's welcome Mr. Santos.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. So that introduction was great. So you saved me a lot of time explaining the demographics of the district, which is very long. It's about 44 miles in length from the eastern end to the most western end. I live in Whitestone, Queens, for those of you who are wondering which part of the district I'm in. So just wanted to introduce myself. I'm 32 years old. I'm a financial advisor for Harbor City Capital. I'm actually the regional director for New York City. And I've been in finance for 11 years. So I understand budgets and economy and how these things operate and work. So essentially my campaign's key issues are law and order, public safety, and I think we can all say this together, but it's the future of our children. We need to leave this country in good shape for our future leaders, our children, which is the most precious and important thing I think we can all agree on in our lives. And I don't believe that the current leadership and the current representatives are doing that job. At least I don't think so, not at all. And I've been campaigning very, very hard on making sure that I am an active voice and a very, clear voice for the people of the 3rd Congressional District. But I also want to make it very important for everyone to understand that not just because I will represent the seat of the 3rd Congressional District does it mean that I will legislate with that in mind. My legislation in Congress would be for the entire country, and it should benefit the entire country. I believe that we should start focusing very hard on law and order because our communities are safe because of our law enforcement officers, and this absolute preposterous notion that the police are bad is a very bad message to send out, not only to our children, but to send out across the country in the latter scale. Just today, I was at a Back to Blue rally in Hauppauge, not in my district, but just a little east of my district. And it was phenomenal. About 4,000 to 5,000 people came together in order to support the police. This is beautiful. A lot of Trump people, supporters out in the crowd as well, chanting 4 more years, get well soon, God bless the president. I mean, I think we can all agree. We want the president of the United States to be well and healthy. It's very important. He's the leader of the free world. If it were President Obama, I'd wish the same. Whichever president, we need to respect our president and the man sitting or woman in that seat in the Oval Office. So just want to send out some prayers for President Trump and First Lady Melania Trump, and then pretty much open the floor to discussion. I'm sure you guys are going to have a lot of questions for me, and I'm ready to take them. But thank you for having me tonight.
Thank you, George. Let's see if we have questions from the audience. Okay. I noticed you have the opponent. He is working in his office for quite a long time, right? Can you talk about the difference his campaign? No, what issues he concerns, what you can do for the people? What's the difference?
Absolutely. So my opponent's actually been in office, in public office, since 1990, if I'm not mistaken here, 1996 or 1994. But I can check and get back to you on that. I know it's about 26, 27 years that he's been in office, give or take. He was mayor of Glen Cove. He was Nassau County executive. And now he's been in Congress for 2 terms, and he's seeking his 3rd election now. Congressman Suozzi has gone to Congress. I have no idea how, after he did what he did as county executive to Nassau County and made it the most expensive county in the country. He rose taxes so high in Nassau County at his time as county executive that Nassau County made it on a very bad list of being the most expensive county in the United States of America. And then only God can really explain how he became congressman and how people forgot his shortcomings as executive. His contributions in Congress had been basically none, aside from photo ops, awards in paper, but no real change in legislation. He claims to be very against assault deduction and that he was going to champion it. He has the majority, he is part of the majority party in the House of Representatives and still has failed to deliver a bill to rectify the issues with the SALT deductions. He has a wish list to make it unrealistic. However, it's sad to say that the congressman has 0 accomplishments in 4 years in Congress, and he believes that people should give him a chance for 2 more years. He's been in the majority for the last 2 years and has done absolutely nothing. I believe that it's not hard to do more than nothing when you're elected. So if elected and when elected, I promise, and my commitment to the people of the district is that I will fight hard every day to think and create legislation to better the lives of my constituents and my fellow community members. Just recently, there was a shelter in Jericho that threatened the way of life of the constituents in Jericho and Long Island. It was brought up to my attention by a concerned citizen by the name of Angela. And Angela had long discussions with myself and my campaign manager, Harry Brar. We met a couple of times. Obviously, I'm not an attorney, so I can't litigate or represent, and I'm not an elected official. I'm still seeking election. However, what I was able to do was I was able to team up and find more information. I spoke to former Senator Jack Martins, who was representing a group for concerned parents of Jericho who were fighting this shelter. I also managed to connect with the town supervisor, Joe Saladino, town attorney, Frank Scalera, town councilman Lou Brodo, who were all instrumental in bringing the shelter down and getting the court victory. Now, I want to stress enough that I'm a private citizen, so there's a lot that I cannot do, but one thing I can be now is your advocate. So I advocated for the town of Jericho residents. I went as far as I could possibly go, coordinated with who I could. I put the win of this battle in the hands of the very competent attorney and the elected officials of the town, who were able to temporarily shut down this illegal shelter from rising up, and it gave us time to now fight a bigger fight to win the war. Because again, this victory doesn't mean that the shelter is not going to happen. It just means it's not going to happen now, and we need to continue to fight. And it's things like that that I promise you, and I guarantee you, and that I will bring to to New York's 3rd Congressional District. My opponent did absolutely nothing about this. This was a project that can drastically change the way of life of the people of Jericho, and he absolutely did nothing. New York City Police Department was defunded $1 billion, and that drastically changed the protocols of safety and law and order in New York City, and he absolutely did nothing. And he represents 18% of his district is in Queens. That's part of New York City, and he did nothing. So it's really easy to do nothing, and it's really not that difficult for me to go into Congress and do a lot more than he has done. But I want to make sure that you guys understand that the goal here is to excel and to bring respect and real representation for all the members of the 3rd Congressional District of Long Island.
Thank you, George. I just look at your website. I noticed you're you actually are coming from an immigration family. So your parents immigrated to United States from Brazil, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I just wonder because lots of Chinese people, they're immigrants too. So we came from China. So I just wonder your immigration. You know, you're from the immigration family. Does that affect you the view or in the future your work as a legislature, just to people, like how would that affect you to serve the people?
So I am first generation born American, and if I ever said I was anti-immigration, that means I was anti my parents, and I am.
Exactly.
So I think immigration is what built this country. I have a soft heart for immigration, but I also believe in law and order. One of my most controversial steps and my most controversial stances is that I support the path to citizenship for DACA recipients. So long as they're not criminals and they have not committed any crimes, I believe that Obama instituted DACA unlawfully and with an overreach of the executive power of executive power that he had. However, I don't believe that after 8 years of giving these people a shot at a normal life and giving them green cards and work authorizations, it's going to be appropriate for us to take it away from them and deport them, or worse, leave them back to being illegals, right? I think they would add more to our society. A lot of them are bright young people who arrived here under the age of 16 and have a lot of contributions for society. So I do believe that we should empower and push for DACA, even though we broke the law 8 years ago when President Barack Obama instituted the law. Now, moving forward as far as immigration, I respect immigration because there is a lot of people who are waiting in line patiently for their time. And I don't believe in skipping the line. I do believe that in order for us to fix immigration in this country, it's going to take compromise. We have about 8 million undocumented aliens living in the United States today. And that number oftenly is played around with. Some people say 8, some people say 12. I've heard as high as 15. I really don't know the number, and I don't think the government at this point really knows the number. But I believe that one thing is for sure. I believe in the absolute deportation and banning from the United States of any felon or high misdemeanor criminals. They have nothing to add to our society and should be deported. Now, I do not believe, however, in a mass deportation, but I also do not believe in an open wide amnesty. I believe that we should repatriate those who are, to use a nicer word, we should repatriate those who are illegal criminals and that have committed crimes. And I believe that we should create a point and merit-based system to try to put the people that are illegal here in the legal path to residency. And there's multiple ways we can do that through immigration reform. And as far as for the people who are doing this the right way and waiting in line, I can only thank them for respecting the process. And what I can say is that your sacrifice and your will to following the law will not go by unnoticed. Unfortunately, a lot of people have done and taken these choices of crossing our borders undocumented or overstaying their visas. I can't imagine that it was because they just were, they felt like it. I think it's extenuating circumstances called for them to actually make this difficult decision of leaving their country and coming to America for a better life. I do wish they would have done it the proper way, but I am a moderate when it comes to immigration, and I do think that we should have compassion as the free country and the free world we are. After all, everybody wants a part of America. It's a great country. That's why my parents came here. That's why a lot of the Chinese who live here, Chinese Americans now proudly came here. It's because of the land of opportunity and freedom and no persecution or tyrannical governments.
Thank you. We have a question from the audience. They ask, what is your position in K-12 education? We know the city of New York has proposed to lower admission standard for the specialized schools, so more African students and African American students and the Latino American students can be admitted to these schools. So what's your view about that?
I think that the K-12 system in the United States of America is an embarrassment. We don't even rank amongst the top 20 educations worldwide. We are behind countries who are classified as third world, such as India. And that's actually embarrassing. Nothing wrong for India. I mean, that's great for them. But if we're going to categorize India a third world country, but then our education system is behind theirs, there's a serious problem. Maybe we're the third world country, not India, I can't believe it. But and as far as Bill de Blasio and Carranza wanting to destroy the only hope that middle-class Americans in New York City have of sending their children to a free higher education by sending them to schools like Bronx Science, Brooklyn Tech, Stuyvesant, by reducing or abolishing the SHSATs is absolutely wrong. I do not think that we should hand out the privilege of attending these schools. You have to work hard. One thing, I went to public schools, in the public school system in New York from K to 8th grade. And in those years in school, I can remember one thing. The most intelligent, dedicated students in my class were immigrant students. They were either Asians, South Asians. They were very determined, and they had the tenacity and the drive for study that I wish I had. I didn't have the same dedication. My parents pushed for education very hard, but they were happy if I was an okay student that was doing my job, versus the parents of my colleagues who wanted more from them. I'm a very well accomplished businessman today, and I'm a proud economist graduate from Baruch College, and summa cum laude graduate from Baruch College, and an MBA recipient and holder from NYU. I'm very proud of my New York City education, but I do know that till this day, my friends, specifically the Asians and South Asians who work really, really hard, are amongst the most successful young professionals in my life today. And we went to the same schools, same education. Some of them actually went to Harvard, Yale, Columbia. These are brilliant students. To take away the opportunity from middle-class Americans here in New York City of allowing their children to go to a high quality education school is absolutely not fair. We need to look at it, excuse me, we need to look at it from this perspective. We need to protect these schools from Carranza and de Blasio so that they continue to perform and deliver high-level education for those students who dedicate the time, not just give them out for participation trophies, because then the whole point of higher quality education is moot and it's pointless. Then we just go back to zone schools, and whatever you get, you get. And that's really not why these students dedicate so much of their 7th and 8th grade of junior high school in studying so hard so they can pass that test. I know for a fact, I took the test and I failed. And not because I wasn't smart, because you really need to dedicate. And I was too worried dedicating more about having fun. I was a kid. What can I say? But I went on to a very good school, in private school. And a very big part of my story is in 2007, when I was in high school, unfortunately, the economy crashed and my parents had to declare Chapter 13 bankruptcy. And unfortunately, I was pulled out of my school in my senior year, and I was told I would have to go to public school. Well, at the time when I went to the school, public schools don't have a lot of love, I'd say, for prep school students. So they looked at my transcript and said, oh, you know what? It's easier if you just do 12th grade all over again next year, take the next 6 months off, and you'll be fine. Well, I didn't want to take 6 months off, and I didn't want to do the whole thing again. So essentially, against my father and my mother's wishes, I applied and I took a GED test. And it was easy. I got every single one of the 400 questions on the GED test correct. At the time, Governor Pataki and Mayor Bloomberg called me to congratulate me. And I went on to a full scholarship to Baruch College because of my impressive results of the GED. And here I am today. I don't have a high school diploma. I have a GED diploma, but I am a very successful individual who worked very hard. I worked hard more so on my college education than I did in my high school education, but I would protect K through 12 and advance K through 12. We need to take away Common Core. We need to bring math back to 1 + 1 = 2, not 1 + 1 = 2 or 11, right? We need to make sense of our mathematics, and we need to really take this on and increase. Our curriculum needs desperate help. We need to actually go seek help in countries like South Korea, China, India, the UK. They have superb schools and curriculums, which put them all amongst the top 20 curriculums in schooling in the whole world.
Did you have a chance to talk to the teachers union in your district to see if they support your idea, especially in education area?
Unfortunately, the teachers union tends to be very Democrat, and they didn't even have, they weren't interested in hearing what I had to say. So unfortunately, they did not listen to my thoughts.
Mm-hmm. So that's a big fight. You will fight for your people, for the students, for the young people in your district.
I've never picked a fight I couldn't win.
I can feel your passion. Here's another question for you. If you get elected to the U.S. Congress, what would you do to help lower the criminal rates and the gun fighting in African American neighborhoods across the country, such as New York, Chicago, even our Seattle area?
Okay. So there's a simple solution to reducing crime and gang fighting in the African American community, and that's the power of education. Education brightens the mind, and it brings information into the mind of young adults. The problem is we're losing these kids in the inner cities for several reasons, but I'll point a few out. Democrats have had a strong hold in the inner cities, and I'm going to use Chicago, or even actually, let's not go to Chicago. Let's go to the Bronx, Brooklyn, New York City, right? They have held a stronghold. There hasn't been a lot of congressional people or congressmen in New York City, I have to walk back. New York is only getting bad now because we had 20 good years with Giuliani and de Blasio. So it's not a really good example. There wasn't a lot of gang fighting, and that was a great example that we saw 1980s with Dave Dinkins and the disaster that New York City was, and then what and then what Rudy Giuliani did to it, and then what Bloomberg continued to do to it. For a total of 20 years, we were the safest big city in the country. We were an amazing graduation rate in schools, and we barely had any gun violence and any gun related deaths or assaults in the city. So Now in the last 7 years, it's been horrible because of Bill de Blasio, and most recently in the last 6 months, it's been absolutely atrocious. But let's use Chicago. Chicago is in the state of Illinois. President Barack Obama is from the state of Illinois. He was the first African-American president elected in the history of this country. And he did less for the African-American community than any other president has ever done because he took them for granted. Chicago was no better 8 years after Obama got elected than any other city was with any other president. So the key to reducing violence and marginalization within that community is education. We need to come in, the federal government needs to come in and build better schools, create incentives, and we need to push children to understand, and even young teenagers or even young adults, there's a better way. You don't have to live in government welfare. You don't have to live under the wing of the Democrats who think that, you know, if they fear the people to believing if a Republican gets elected, they're all going to be homeless and starving. That's not true. Welfare was designed to help you grow, not to make it a way of life. And how do you make a person grow from welfare assistance? Is by educating them. So we need to improve our education in the inner city, create incentives for young adults to, you know, when you graduate, you get XYZ opportunities, you get college tuition waivers for better schools, and you empower the mind of these young men and women. And then you'll start seeing violence become almost zero. That's the same way that countries like the Scandinavian countries did, the Nordics countries did. It was through the power of education that they were able to reduce crime to a point where they don't even have more than 1 or 2 jail facilities. Iceland has 1 jail facility with under 100 prisoners in it. That's just how low crime is in Iceland. I'm just using that as an example as to how better education and access and incentives for education can create a better society. And infrastructure is a second issue. We need to better their infrastructure. For example, Queensbridge is the largest development, housing development in this country. 70,000 people sleep and live in Queensbridge. They have issues with gas, water, heat, and basically they live in unsanitary conditions. Their buildings are infested by rodents and insects. I mean, the infrastructure is also a big issue for the African-American community and for the inner city that we need to address immediately. There's no reason 70,000 people should be living like animals in Queensbridge in AOC's district, or AOC, Carolyn Maloney, it divides there for both of them. So, you know, it's things like that that we need to start looking at. We need to apply education, infrastructure, educational incentives, explain that welfare is not a career or a way of life. It is a temporary state in your life where you will use it to bounce back. We need to educate our people, and then we shall see violence go down. Another thing that, and I'll throw this here as a little tangent, and if you know, I'll keep it brief. We need to stop this culture of hip hop. I'm not saying hip hop is bad or the art of hip hop is bad, but we need to stop allowing our children and normalizing it on TV, this culture of, I was a drug dealer and I used to shoot and now I'm a billionaire because I made billions rapping, but I have no education. Education's for losers. Whatever it is they say, they're sending a wrong message. They're sending a message of women are beneath men, drugs are the way of life. You know, we need to stop normalizing this in our society. I grew up in the 90s. Look, we didn't have drugs on TV. We didn't have people with music videos full of drugs and gold that they obtained from illicit work, you know, and hey, I turned up pretty good. So I think if we go back to a little bit more common sense and shy away from this culture of almost endorsing crime and the thug life, as they call it, I think we should also see an improvement in our inner cities.
I can't agree more. I think the education is the key to lower the criminal rates. I have a question for you regarding the economic status right now in United States. What would you do to help the small business owner to survive or grow under the pandemic? So, yeah, I think it's really important for lots of people.
Absolutely. So I have a great plan that I think a lot of people look at it and say, that's horrible. Here's how I see it. We already wrote $2.2 trillion, right? We can't keep writing more $2.2 trillion bills. I don't care what Nancy Pelosi has to say. I've agreed, I've achieved the bipartisan. No, you did not. There's no bipartisanship in creating $2.2 trillion more dollars of debt into our country. Here's a great way. I'm an economist. I'm a private equity guy. There is $2 trillion of something called the dry powder in Wall Street today. That means it's $2 trillion of non-invested money because of the pandemic that is just sitting there from the private sector. Instead of the government footing the bill, the government should give, instead of giving corporations like Goldman Sachs, Blackstone, Bank of America more money, how about this? You want a tax credit from the government, you create small business loans from your dry powder into the small businesses, not the mega corporations, the small businesses of America, people employing under 15 people, people who are willing to create 5 new jobs. And by that way, you distribute the wealth from the top corporations into the loans to these small businesses in America to kickstart the engines of America, to fund the kickstarting of the engines of America. In return, what's going to happen is the federal government will collect more money from the creation of wealth and of new jobs from the small businesses. The major corporations will have their money moving and creating them interest, not high interest, and in exchange they'll take a kickback, they'll take a tax credit from the federal government for footing the bill for the federal government. That way we do not further our deficit, we will not tax the crap out of the American people, and we will generate wealth through generating jobs, and that will come in a more organic way instead of just writing $2.2 trillion bills that get completely mismanaged, and the little guys don't see a single penny of it, and all you see is Delta, American Airlines, McDonald's, Chick-fil-A. They all pull in all this money, and then the little guys go bankrupt. So I think it's time to stop writing bills and start putting the big money in corporate America to work for the little people in America so that we can continuously grow our economy back to exactly where we were prior to the pandemic. Trickle-down economics work if it's done right, and if it's well monitored, and if it's well regulated by the federal government on the corporate level. It works, and it works well.
Thank you. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
We have another question coming. Ask you, Congresswoman AOC is also from the great state of New York. She and her gangs in Congress are advocating the Green New Deal, etc. Legislations. So what's your position on it?
The Green New Deal is a expensive wish list of liberal thinking that will never happen. Joe Biden's deal will never happen. These are deals that would cost us trillions and trillions of dollars. It would bankrupt several industries in this country, and it would leave millions of Americans unemployed. And I'm not going to speak largely. I'll break it down into science. The congresswoman, aside from, excuse my crassness, aside from saying the silly thing that farting cows are an issue because they create CO2, she wants to ban meat, apparently, because flatulence of the cows are not welcome. But the way she looks back at reducing the carbon footprint, that means we will no longer have the amount of connectivity with airplanes. We will no longer have the same amount of manufacturing jobs in America. We will no longer have the same amount of agriculture jobs in America, because without the massive network of trucks and airplanes, which create carbon footprint, we won't be able to produce in mass our crops. We would kill millions of jobs. Our economy would be shattered. All in hope for maybe 1 point reduction in CO2. Instead of that, there's a deal called 1 trillion trees. I know it sounds like a lot, right? Leader McCarthy, Kevin McCarthy, I just had dinner with him today. I'll share the picture on social media and you guys can see it. He has a plan, and the plan works. Trees are our natural filter. They take in CO2 and they give us oxygen. If the United States was able to actually put a program and incentive agricultures, manufacturers, corporations to plant trees, 1 trillion trees in the United States of America, we would be able to reduce our CO2 emission by 5 points. AOC's $6 trillion Green New Deal would do it by 1 point and shatter our economy. It's that simple. We need to think of innovative ways to protect the environment. I love the environment. I believe in protecting the environment. I want to clean oceans. I want to clean parks. I don't want to see the state of California burning the way it's been burning. I don't want to see the state of Portland and Oregon burning. But unfortunately, the only way to do that is by common sense legislation, not by wishful thinking of Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Thank you, George. I just want to ask you, can you name your website? And do you have anything you would like us to give the information, give the message to the audience or to whoever cannot attend this meeting, but they may want to help you with your campaign? So
absolutely. So we're 30 days away. All help is welcome. If you can volunteer, volunteer. If you can donate 10, 15, 20, $100, we appreciate it. It goes a long way in getting the message out. Unfortunately, I say this a lot. Politics requires money, because without money, you cannot get the message out to everybody. And that's how bad politicians stay in office for so long, because they can raise more money than challengers like myself. Volunteers are a pivotal and absolute key element of winning an election. The more volunteers we have, the more doors we knock, the more lawn signs we plant, the more palm cards we give. So all the help with volunteering is welcome. You can go online to www.george4ny.com, and that's George, FORNY.com. Register to volunteer, request a lawn sign, make a contribution, and you can also read my entire agenda and my positions on education, healthcare, veteran affairs, law enforcement, and so on and so forth. It's always a pleasure to meet new faces and to talk to constituents and future constituents, fellow community residents, and members of the 3rd Congressional District. I cannot thank you guys enough for the space and for hosting me tonight. I think it's important that I learn about each community. My district is so diverse. There's Chinese Americans, Indian Americans, so there's Jericho, and in parts of Whitestone, there's the Chinese American communities. I have the South Asian, the Indians in Hicksville. I have the Jewish community in North Hempstead. So it's a very diverse district, and I look forward to learning each day more and more about each part of my district and how different and unique their needs are. The more educated I am about every unique district, the better I can represent each and every person in the district.
Sounds great. Definitely, we want to know our candidates so we can understand or we can feel safe, like we put ourselves to your hands and you will work for us. So all the audience, please remember George's formal official website is georgeformy.com. It's GeorgeFormy. Sorry, not for my, it's ny.com. Thank you. And I do have a question, so I could not let you go because I don't want to disappoint the audience. They do have two questions for you. The first one, we can go a little bit brief, so we have the second guest speaker. So the first one is, what is your projection of presidential election?
The prediction for the presidential election changes in my head every day. Just like President Trump is now a COVID patient, I was also a COVID patient on March 7th. I contracted COVID when I came back from CPAC in Washington, D.C. I was very sick for 2 weeks. Fortunately and unfortunately, fortunately, it was very early in my campaign. Unfortunately, there was not enough study, so I didn't have hydroxychloroquine. I just had Advil for the fever. So it wasn't a very pleasant 2 weeks, but I'm here, well and alive and healthy. Despite having an underlying condition, I made it. I believe the president will make it too. He has a lot of research on his side. He's in Walter Reed Medical Facility, which is absolutely a phenomenal medical facility. There's a reason that's where the president is taken care of. It's because it's the best. I believe President Donald Trump will win his re-election because it's really hard to fight and win from beat a president that has done so much for America. The left wants to say that he's this, that he's orange, that he's bad, and this and that. But at the end of the day, he delivered. He promises made, promises kept. I believe President Trump will beat Joe Biden. It's not going to be an easy one. So remember, we can turn New York this time. The polls are showing we can actually make New York vote Republican, and it would be the second time in history. The first time was Ronald Reagan in recent history, excuse me. Ronald Reagan won New York in 1984, and I believe Donald Trump can do the same. As far as the prediction goes, I think that he will win the 2020 election, and we will have 4 more prosperous years in this country.
The second question is, do you think stimulus package deal will be done soon? Both parties reach an agreement anytime soon.
So I saw that there's a potential for a new stimulus package. As I stated earlier, I think if we're going to create a stimulus package to help the people who are unemployed, I think sure. I don't believe that we need to do another $2.2 trillion package. I do believe we're reaching an agreement. The president's out of play. Steven Mnuchin has a lot more flexibility, and I believe he will use that flexibility, and Nancy Pelosi is going to try to take advantage of it. Now, it can pass the House and the Senate. Whether the president is willing to sign the country into $2.2 trillion more of debt, I don't know. I genuinely don't know if it will pass. My heart goes out to the people who are unemployed and who cannot, make money at the moment. But the unemployment rate is dropping because America is coming back, and it's coming back faster than everybody thought. Just recently, the last time I checked, we were at 8.4 level of unemployment. That's actually lower than the Obama administration unemployment rate. So our unemployment rate during this pandemic is now starting to become lower than Obama's unemployment rates for his entire 8 years. So I'm very happy to see that this president has worked so hard, that this country is so in such good form and shape that it's almost unbreakable. I will say that I hope that they reach an agreement. I don't know what size of agreement they're aiming for. Last I heard it was 2.2 trillion. I think that's a dangerous bill to sign. It's a lot of money we don't have. We're creating an even bigger deficit for ourselves. That's the consequences that we would leave for our children. And I can't in good conscience say I like that. I want my kids to be able to afford America.
Sure, we all have the American dreams, and we came from a different country, but we work hard, study hard, so we are able to live the life that we want.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for your time. I want to let the audience know, please go to George's website. He wrote beautiful personal stories and you can see very clearly about his view on all these campaign key issues. So thank you so much, George, for the great information, great answers for all the questions.
Thank you.
Nice to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me, everybody, and have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you. Good
Bye-bye.
night.
Take
Bye.
care.
谢谢各位朋友啊，我们刚才已经听到了纽约第3区国会区的候选人 George Santos， 他给我们带来的精彩的演讲，回答了我们许多的问题。我相信很多问题能够他的回答都能够引起我们的共鸣。